Augmented conversation, amplified world. I'm going to interestingly go way back in time. Let's see if I can move this out of my way. Good. During the mechanical ages, we had extended our bodies in space. Today, after more than a century of electric technology, we have extended our central nervous system itself in a global embrace, abolishing both space and time as far as our planet is concerned. Let's see. And this was Marshall McLuhan, back up, wrote in Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man in 1964. I love that title, Extensions of Man, Media as the Extensions of Man. Hold on to that. 1964, you could make a phone call to almost anyone who had a phone. Of course, it was via wire. November 22nd, 1963, at 12:30 p.m., President Kennedy was shot. Literally 10 minutes later, the CBS News announced it nationwide. In 1969, I was 12 years old. The world watched live video broadcasts from the moon. Today, slightly different. You can still make a phone call to almost anyone in the world, anywhere, but almost no one does. Someone tweets, and a few milliseconds later, millions of brains are impacted, perhaps billions. Our consciousness has been extended into everyone's lives. This global central nervous system exists. This is not always a good thing. We're allowing other people and organizations and systems to think for us, to decide for us. We only think we're choosing the future we desire. This is, by the way, literally by design. We're in danger of becoming the consumers of the future instead of its creators. There is an alternative, and the foundation for that alternative was laid in 1968. As I said, I'm giving a historical perspective to justify the future. Doug Engelbart wrote this: the key thing about all the world's big problems is they have to be dealt with collectively. If we don't get collectively smarter, we're doomed. And in 1962, going even further back, he wrote this: Augmenting Human Intellect, a Conceptual Framework. If you haven't read this, you have to. And the reason isn't because it's an important historical document, it's an important future document. Much of what he talked about in here hasn't happened yet and needs to. His concept was a computer was a medium that extended our ability to think and collaborate, but not, when I say human's ability here, it doesn't mean a human. I mean a human-computer-human symbiosis. The NLS system, online system, was designed around this idea that we're using computers to communicate, collaborate, complexity. He, among other things, created the mouse. In 1968, he did a demonstration of these things. I'm going to do a quick video of that.
And so this special thing, if I label 13, will switch over. So in his display, he sees my text, so I'll execute it. And sure enough, it does. But what's that running around? Well, if he's looking at my text, he'd like to have something to say about it. So we put on a marker, a tracking spot that he controls. So he's sitting in Menlo Park looking at this text, and he can point to it. But we've carefully reserved for me the right to control and operate on this. So my bug is more powerful than yours. But we can have an argument. Yeah. That's what they call a bug fight. So, all right. So in case you haven't been listening, Bill, we've been going through lots of examples and setting up in collaboration here so that we can go on into information retrieval. And we've set up now audio coupling, and then we're both looking at the same display, and that'd be very handy to work. We can talk to each other and point, and maybe later I can hand you the chalk on this blackboard, like saying, here, you control it. But let's stay this mode now and add another feature that hardware-wise is available through the kind of display we have. I'd like to see you while I'm working on it. So before I can do that, I'd have to set up my display in a certain way. Set it up so I see it over like that. That leaves a corner up there, and I say, now computer, do the automatic switching that'll bring in a camera picture from the camera mounted on his console, such as the camera mounted on mine is. Hi, Bill. That's great. Now we're connected audio. You can see my work, you can point at it, and I can see your face, and we can talk. So let's do some collaborating.
That was not just screen sharing. That was actually a shared computer system. Both of those participants had full control, full access. Very different from what we're doing right now, which is really, to me, quite amazing. Doug Engelbart's vision, totally collaborative, as people working together in a shared intellectual space. This is a really powerful concept provided by the medium of the computer. Alan Kay actually was at that. He spent a lot of time with Engelbart. This is my favorite quote in the world: "Man is much more than a tool builder. He is an inventor of universes." That same year, Alan had visited the University of Illinois and saw one of the first LCD displays. And before that, he had spent time with Seymour Papert. He'd spent time, obviously, with Doug. He had, on an airplane ride back from U of I, had this stroke of lightning called the Dynabook. This is something you all probably are familiar with because you probably use them every day. Certainly you use miniature versions of these. But this was a transformational device. It was literally the thing that launched us to where we are today. This is a picture he drove on. He drew on that airplane ride. Note is two children, and they both have Dynabooks. But look very closely. You'll see that those screens actually have the same image on both. They're actually playing Space War together. And if you read this paper, A Personal Computer for Children of All Ages, where the idea of personal computer was first described, you'll see that they actually go and switch to collaboratively programming that game. This is like the description of the future that he had in mind was so far beyond even what we're doing today. And that led directly to this system. This is Smalltalk in 1978. I'm going to just play a very short part of this.
Is used to select information. A window is selected by moving the cursor inside of it and pressing the first mouse button. A selected window displays above other windows.
I don't want to spend more time on this. The main point is, if I set you down in this system in 1978, you'd already know how to use it because basically you've been using this. In that same year, Steve Jobs had an opportunity to get a demonstration of this incredible system. I'll talk about that in a second, but this laid the foundation of what we think of modern computing today. But they were built around the idea of computers, communication, collaboration tool. The goal of those people, starting even earlier, was to enable a symbiotic relationship between computers and humans. So what happened to that? As I mentioned, Steve had an opportunity to see the results. The Xerox Alto was referred to as the interim Dynabook.
And they showed me really three things. But I was so blinded by the first one that I didn't even really see the other two. One of the things they showed me was object-oriented programming. They showed me that, but I didn't even see that. The other one they showed me was really a networked computer system. They had over 100 Alto computers, all networked, using email, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't even see that. I was so blinded by the first thing they showed me, which was the graphical user interface. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen in my life. Now, remember, it was very flawed. What we saw was incomplete. They'd done a bunch of things wrong, but we didn't know that at the time. It's still, though, they had the germ of the idea was there, and they'd done it very well. And within, 10 minutes, it was obvious to me that all computers would work like this.
And they do. What was really so amazing, I bought my Mac February 11th, 1984, and it was a transformation. It was an amazing piece of hardware. At the time, I didn't realize it was missing a whole slew of things either. But it was a transformative system. Another transformative system was this, Mosaic. Some of you may remember when this came out. But here's a really interesting thing about this particular browser. If you zoom in, you see the edit button. And the idea was, it wasn't a consumption system. It was actually a consumption and creation system. Google in 1998, launched, the goal is to organize the world's information, a critical aspect of our life today, and of course, Facebook in 2004. And then in 2007, a hugely important device came out, the iPhone. And the iPhone has been a transformative thing, but it is also transformed us in ways that aren't exactly the right thing. That iPhone was not a Dynabook. It was the furthest thing from. It was focused on consumption, a consumer device, not a creation device. I mean, it was very good at being a consumption device, but they were so focused on that you simply couldn't program it. And even when Scratch was made available, which is a children's programming language, it wasn't allowed on the iPhone until a few years ago. So here we are, instead of being creators of the future, we've become consumers. We spend most of our time on consumption devices. So what's actually needed? And one of the things I believe is this idea of an augmented conversation. Augmented conversation redefines the nature of how you're going to communicate. There's a number of features. It's a creative discussion within a group of users that is extraordinarily enhanced to the kinds of tools and capabilities that are only available with a computer. This is straight out of Doug Engelbart's playbook. Computer AI is a full participant in this conversation. It acts as a medium, enabling us to jointly discuss, explore, and construct complex systems, data sets, whatever, as naturally as we talk about the weather. Doug didn't have AI, but he would have used this if he had. There has to be a guarantee of shared truth. In other words, that simulation I see has to be exactly the same one you see. Anything I do to affect that shared simulation must be accurately shared. I have to see you do it as you do it. Otherwise, you can't trust it. It's not going to be a communication channel if you don't believe that it's actually shared. And finally, it has to be friction-free, instant, and live. I do something, I create something, you see it. Somebody walks up to us while we're exploring that and they see it as well. Why does it matter? Augmented reality is going to replace your phone, but it's going to replace your tablet. It's going to replace your PC. It's going to replace every single screen in the world. And why do I say that? You don't need screens when you're wearing a screen that is as big as the world already. Virtual will not just become as real life, it's going to become real life. We'll soon live together inside a shared information space. This space amplifies the physical plane of existence. Augmented reality has the potential to amplify our intentions and ideas, enabling us to create and explore these new universes together. But it's not just augmenting reality. Tools change the users. It's actually augmenting you, enables human symbiosis that will redefine the nature of how you communicate. And you are defined more by how you communicate than anything else. The very foundation of what it means to be human is about to change. Communication defines us as a species, a culture, society, even as an individual. Communication enables us to think in ways that transcend the physical limitations. Mathematics is a good example. It allows us to explore science, explore things that are simply not normal, not natural otherwise. But who's going to decide what we can do? What you can see, what you can do, who you can communicate with, what you're going to become, in particular, what we are all going to become. So what is actually needed is this. AR must not be another phone. The phone is primarily a consumer device in the service of great user experience. AR may fall into the same trap. Microsoft DOS was a powerful system, enabled the rise and dominance of the personal computer. We need an MS-DOS today. It did this, it ensured every system and every piece of software would interoperate on every PC. It was the single most important factor that drove the intense growth of that industry. And we have a common platform like that now. The browser, with all of its flaws and limitations, and there are many, is the only common platform available that can enable this augmented conversation. It's the plain old telephone service in the MS-DOS of AR. And the browser's evolved. It's not that simple mosaic browser we saw before, it's far more than that, but it isn't quite an OS. And what it is fast, easy to develop, getting very powerful WebGL, WebGPU, WebAssembly, WebXR, WebRTC, and it's everywhere. You can put a browser, and I've seen browsers on watches. And what does it need? It needs to be turned inside out. 3D WebXR worlds will contain 2D web pages, of course. You need a true collaboration framework. That's my particular interest. Like Smalltalk before, we don't really know what these things are going to be until we're inside them. And you have to reinvent the systems from inside them. That's what happened with Smalltalk. That's what happened with Doug's system. We need to add back the edit button. And this needs to become the system instead of a feature of a system. So AR is going to extend the nature and power of the human narrative. We're defined more by how we communicate than anything else. And the very foundation of what it means to be human is about to change. And we need to choose what we're about to become. So I'm going to do a very, very quick demo. I'm going to stop sharing this one. And let me get out of this. And I'm going to switch to another one. Hold on. Let me get back here, and I'm going to share screen again. And hopefully, yes, this will work. And I'm sharing this. What you're looking at is two systems, two browser windows side by side, and they're running bit identical and collaborative. And what I can do is on this one, I can, so it was this one. Oh, I know I did. There we go. So I can launch these little cubes here like so, and I do one on one, it shows up in the other. And what's neat is you all can join this. If you get your phone out, simply put your camera onto that QR code right now, and you can join the simulation, and you'll see exactly the same thing I see. And with that, I'm done, and you can just play with this, and I'd love to see you all join if you can. But I'm open for questions, and thanks for allowing me to go a little over my time.
Okay, thank you very, very much, David. That was wonderful. All right, let's, we have questions from the audience. David Lindelbauer asks, what do you think are the current pieces of work and research that'll be considered transformative pieces of technology in 10 or 20 years?
Wow, that's a terrifically good question. And I do think, well, I do think that there's three that are particularly interesting. Obviously, this integration of graphics and headsets, AR devices, in that time period are going to be the only devices that you have. It's like this idea of you won't need a watch, you won't need, you're going to put these things on in the morning, just so you put your glasses on and you're going to wear them all day long. And I think given the extraordinary power, it's just always on use supercomputer, it's going to be, it's just going to permeate your life, as Tim Cook said. Obviously, that's going to be extraordinarily powered by AI, but the other part of it is it's going to be a totally collaborative system, as I made a point here. Whether anyone likes it or not, it's going to be a device that is going to really change the nature of how we think. So in a sense, the biggest transformation, I think, is in the nature of what we are as humans. These things, we don't see it today. The stuff's invisible. It's like McLuhan is rumored to have said, I don't know who discovered water, but it wasn't a fish. And we're in this really interesting kind of water right now that is full of incredible currents that are transforming us as we breathe the water in a sense. So I think that that alone is probably the strongest vector, and it's one of those, I think, that, you know, when you have the internet in your pocket, these are supercomputers, a high-end phone's more powerful than a mid-range PC. We just take this for granted. I mean, just like 10 years ago, these things were amazing, and today they're so so much an integral part of our lives that the last Apple press release for our last iPhone presentation was basically ignored. Nobody cares anymore. This is it went from the figure to the ground, and that's what's going to happen with AR. It's going to become invisible.
All right, great answer. Follow-up question. There's a lot of focus right now on visuals in mixed reality systems. Do you think that focus on the visual sense is going to hinder the growth of MR?
No, I think that's a necessary part. I also think that there's a lot of really great work being done in audio. It's, you know, the one thing I think we're going to have trouble with is haptics and smell. But the rest of it, I think, is going to be fully integrated. And like I said, it's not a bad thing to enhance the reality that you're in. I don't think. I think that's really where we're extraordinarily empowered. And the visual is such an incredibly high bandwidth medium that that's one of the reasons I think we're drawn to it. And it's like the bandwidth of smell is quite low. Audio is certainly a lot better, but the visual field, being able to explore that and in particular interact with it, like I'm doing now, is a key element of the power that the computers have offered from the very beginning. You know, that wasn't an accident. Those screens showed up as quickly as they did, and I remember I was using punch cards, and you know, it's not the same animal anymore. And I think that's just that's a necessary element.
That's a good answer. And a number of people ask variations or around the same set of questions. Valkyrie Savage, James Egan, Rio Suzuki are all asking questions around. There's a lot of, we seem to keep falling into a consumer device as something to consume as opposed to create. There have been attempts like HyperCard, et cetera, to turn everybody into a creator, but they somehow, everything seems to switch over to consumption. Do you think we're going to be able in the future with AR to get out of that into a more mutually creative mode of being?
I think so. The challenge is that that's not where the money is. We're looking at the fact that the iPhones or phones in general have eclipsed PCs for sure. And there's a foundational difference between what you can do on a PC and what you can do on a phone. And the reality too is, I would say most people aren't necessarily creators, but they're not even going to get the chance in the near future. And this is the very scary part. I think it's, if you're looking at the financial incentive, it's in your best interest to not allow users to be in control. And that's why I worry about what AR is going to wind up being. It's definitely, I believe, the first versions of these things, in a sense the same way that VR is, are going to be primarily consumption devices with very little thought on the use of these systems in other ways. I'm hoping that we have a number of killer applications that transform that. But you know, it's an uphill battle in a lot of ways. Getting people to be computer literate used to mean that you knew how to program, and now it sort of means knowing how to turn the thing on and move windows around, which is a shame. So I do think, I mean, I'm looking at the future, and I know as a creator, I need AR to enable that. It's essential for me. And I think at least some small subset of humanity, that's going to be the case. I'm really hoping that we have a platform that allows us to do that.
All right. So one final question, which is going to combine a number of people's questions into one. And this was from Orson Zhu and from Evan Shimizu and also Yansu Kim. So are we the web clearly changed the nature of how we work, and the smartphone created a fundamental change in how we work, we play, we fold space and time in ways that were much more than just, oh, it's a text editor or it's a better phone. What do you see as the fundamental change in the nature of the beast of communication once we have universal mixed reality? How do we fundamentally change as individuals and as a society in how we are?
It's to me, we're about to enter a time of magic. There's no limitations on what, as a programmer, I think of that as translation thought into a kind of reality. And in the very near future, ARs, I think, when done right, is going to enable just that. We're about to enter a time of magic where the ideas that you have get reified almost instantly as you think them, and not just reified or created for just you, but for the people around you. The conversations you're going to have are, I imagine, as wizards sitting around a table and throwing spells out there, and magical things occur. I think one of the most beautiful examples of that is your Chalk Talk, Ken, where it's a beautiful example of magic at work, but working. It's unlike the magic that we see on TV, perhaps. This is magic that is real. And so the biggest transformation, I think, is that limitations of conversion of thought into actions go away, which means your ability to think things is infinitely extended as well. You tend to limit your thoughts to things that are possible, and when there's no longer a limit in the possible, then there should be no limits in what you can think and hence make possible.